Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Lauren and I'm going to be presenting today. We're going to be talking about lighting technologies and solar cells. So, I'm sure that many people already have heard about LEDs and solar cells, but what you might not have known is that the technology underlying these two things are fundamentally the same, and we're going to explain today how they work. So to start off, we're going to actually start with a different kind of light bulb. Does anyone here know what this light bulb is? Anyone? Well, exactly. This is an incandescent light bulb. And an incandescent light bulb generates light by heating up a wire filament inside. And when it gets really, really hot, then it starts to glow. Now, as you might imagine, this is not the most efficient way of generating light, because you're basically taking heat and turning it into light. So does anyone have any guesses as to how much of the input energy actually turns into light versus heat in this light bulb? I heard 20%. Any other guesses?
30%.
What? 30. All right, well, what actually happens is only 10% of the input energy gets converted to light in an incandescent bulb. That means that 90% of the energy we put in gets converted to heat. If our purpose is to generate light, this is not the best technology. So we're going to turn to another kind of technology to see if it helps our efficiency problems. Does anyone know what this kind of light is? A fluorescent, exactly. So this fluorescent bulb, the way it works is that inside these coils, there is a tiny amount of mercury vapor. And this mercury vapor, when we send an electric current in, and the electric current is an energy source, remember, this energy excites the mercury atoms, and the electrons in the mercury atoms, they go from low energy state into a higher energy state. This is when we add energy to them. So what goes up in general must come down. And since this is also the case for the electrons that we excite into a higher energy state. And so when these electrons that are now in this elevated energy state fall down, what is emitted with this extra energy that we have is light. And so that's how light is produced in a fluorescent bulb. Does anyone have guesses as to how much more efficient this might be compared to an incandescent? I heard 60% efficient. Any other guesses? 20% efficient. That's actually correct. So 20% of the input energy gets turned into light when we're using a fluorescent bulb. That's pretty good, right? It's twice as efficient as our incandescent, which turned heat into light. But it's still not the best because 80% of the of the input energy that we are putting into this fluorescent bulb is still being turned into heat. 80% to heat. And we can probably do better than that. So before I talk about our third type of lighting technology, I'm going to explain the concept of voltage, because without voltage, we wouldn't be able to power any of these light bulbs. So, what I have right here is going to be a ball and a slide, because the equivalent of voltage is as if we were saying pressure for water. So the same way that water pressure pushes water through a bunch of pipes, voltage pushes electrons through a circuit. So say that I had the same pressure here and here. Would my ball roll anywhere? Is my ball rolling? No, it's not rolling. But if, let's say I tipped it one way or the other. And we're pretending that my ball here is the electron. Once I add a voltage, if there's a higher voltage here and a lower voltage here, if I put my ball, it will roll. And so in the same way that I introduced gravitational potential energy to make my physical ball roll, we introduce electrical potential energy to make electrons move through a circuit. Now, when I talk about an LED, which I have right over here, I'm going to be talking about a very special type of electronic structure that makes this LED work. Now, does anyone know what an LED stands for? Light emitting diode, that's it. So the light emitting part is fairly obvious, but what is a diode? A diode is an electrical component that allows current to flow only in one direction. This basically means that if my slide is tilted this way, or if it's tilted this way, either way, my current is only going to flow in a direction that my diode tells it to flow. And the electronic structure that is responsible for this is called a p-n junction. So I'm going to set up my slide over here to indicate how voltage where voltage tells electrons to move in a p-n junction. I want you to notice, I'm going to come back to this slide later, but this is the direction that voltage points in a p-n junction. In a p-n junction, we have a p side over here, and P stands for positive because there are a lot of positive charge carriers on the P side. On the N side, we have a lot of negative charge carriers, and these are the electrons. The positive charge carriers up here, we're going to refer to them as holes because they're a place where an electron should be but isn't. And when you have something negative that should be somewhere but isn't, that space that it leaves behind is positive. So these positive charge carriers, I want you to remember, are called holes. These negative ones are electrons. Now what's really special about the p-n junction is that we have, remember how in the fluorescence we talked about when electrons go from a higher energy level to a lower energy level, it emits light? Remember that? So what's special about p-n junction is that these electrons naturally start out at this higher energy level, right here. And they're separated from the holes, the positive charge carriers, at this lower energy level right here, by this. By what is a voltage barrier, which is represented by my positioning of my slide. Now, in order for the electron to fall down into a lower energy state, there has to be a spot for it to fall into, right? Can it fall into the lower energy state as it is right now over here? No, it can't, because there are no holes for it to fill in. If it moved over here, however, now there would be holes for it to fill in. The problem is that there's this potential barrier, which is telling the electrons to move this way, and we want them to move this way to join the holes. And in order to make an LED work, just like we added voltage to the incandescent bulb, and just like we added voltage to the fluorescent bulb, we also need to add voltage to the LED. So now I'm going to add a voltage that effectively tips the slide the other direction. And I'm going to need 2 volunteers to help me illustrate how charges move in the p-n junction. So would you like to come over here? Yeah. And you want to come over here as well? Okay, so this here is Anuj and Harvey. So this here is Harvey. So Anuj and Harvey are going to help me illustrate how charges move in the p-n junction, and this is going to illustrate how light is formed. So Anuj, I want you to hold this chair over here. You're going to represent the hole. So this chair, which is a spot for an electron to fill in, is going to be our hole. Harvey over here is going to represent our electron. So since electrons start off on a higher energy level, I want you to stand on these steps right here. Okay, sounds good. So, and remember initially in the p-n junction, my slide was tipped this way, which means that they can't come together. But as soon as I add a voltage, and I'm going to add this voltage right now, and I'm going to tip it this way. This tells you the direction that electrons move. So electrons are going to move this way. Wait, not yet. Go back over there. So as they are right now, Harvey can't jump down because there's no chair lined up with him, right? But now that we've added this voltage, Harvey can start moving this way, and Anuj can start rolling the chair this way. So if you move, and then when they line up, now there's a spot for Harvey to fall into. And the electron that now occupies the hole, the action of coming down from a higher energy level is the emission of light, just as we talked about in the fluorescence. Make sense? Fantastic. Okay, so thank you, our volunteers. We're going to meet you in a moment later. So now I know that you're probably wondering what this has to do with solar cells, right? So the thing is, in a solar cell, we still have our p-n junction, where we have our voltage that is telling our carriers to move in a certain direction. But the difference is instead of adding voltage, we are now adding light. And what we're trying to get out is voltage. What we're trying to get out is charge carrier movement. And so I need my volunteers again, actually. So if you wouldn't mind coming back. So this time, Harvey, who is our electron, is going to start off sitting in this chair. So he is now at the lower energy level right here. And what's going to happen is when we add light to the junction, So when we add light, we're giving Harvey energy. We're giving electrons energy to jump up into a higher energy level. So now that we have added light to the junction, you can now jump into this higher energy level right here. So now we have two free charge carriers. They're now free to move independently because they've separated. We've added light. And which way do they move? Can anyone point in the direction that they move in based on the voltage I have in this junction? Right, exactly. The electrons are going to move that way, and then our holes are going to move the opposite way. And when they separate, so you can move in opposite directions, that is essentially the collection of these carriers, which means we're generating a current. And that is how a solar cell works. So I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. If you have further questions, we can take questions now if you'd like.
So what's the efficiency here compared to the other two light sources?
So a LED is about 80% more efficient than the incandescent bulb, and we actually have an experiment to illustrate this. We can get another volunteer from the audience. Thank you guys. If anyone would like to try our hand crank generator, this here is an incandescent bulb that I'm going to screw into our lamp here. Does anyone want to try hand cranking this? You're free to come up if you like. All right. The diode is 80% more efficient than the 20, so I have to do a little bit of math there, but I can get back to you in a moment. All right, so I'm holding up this bulb over here, and I want you to just spin this as fast as you can. Do we see a little bit of a light generating here? Hold on, is it fast enough? If you go a little faster, maybe you can see a little more. Can anyone see the filament lighting up just a little bit? I guess the sun is a little bright, but there's a little bit of a light coming out of this filament here. But it's really hard to see, right? Now I'm going to change it to the LED, and you can see just how much more efficient or easier it is for you to generate light by cranking with an LED in here in just a moment. All right, here we go. Does everyone see that? Oop, did it go out? Here we go. Try again. Yeah, there we go. You see that light there? So that was a lot easier than the incandescent. That's because it takes a lot less energy input to make an LED light up than it does to make an incandescent light up. Thank you for your question.